quiet then.
No, I'll edit everything out.
Oh, okay.
I just don't want to forget to record it.
I see. I gotcha. Okay. I got you. I've done
My
that.
first wife tried to edit everything out. Didn't work.
You should make that a meme.
You're too funny.
Or maybe the title of a novel.
Yeah, right. My first wife tried to edit me. Didn't work. We got about 3 minutes to go. A little less, maybe.
Okay, I'm just writing here. I'm just finishing some remarks that I wanted to make. Mitch,
So
you know the drill, right?
Coast last. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. How did it go?
I'm still asleep.
That's
no,
on.
It went very well. George is always very nice to me, and we stay away from politics. It went very well. It was a lot of fun.
You're on George Norrie?
Yeah, I'm on a couple of times a year. It's a long time now, about 12 years or so.
Yeah, I've met George a few times myself.
I've never met him.
Oh yeah, he came to our studio. We did an interview with him a long time ago.
Cool.
Oh, that's cool.
I like George. I always have a good time with him. Yeah.
Nice guy.
I always have fun with him.
I wonder why is it this show so late? I mean,
that's what it's always been. Art Bell started it.
In fact, I got a story for you. So I'm talking to her tomorrow again. Art Bell's second producer from 1993, 1994 is actually going to be doing a show with us.
Oh,
cool. Is that when Art left Coast to Coast and went and did his own home studio thing?
I think. Well, I'm not sure, but I think it was when he was just doing his own thing first.
Okay.
Before Coast to Coast, yeah.
Yeah, I was never on with.
I used to listen to Art. I started listening to Art Bell when he was on the radio, like on the Citizens Band.
Yeah, that was where you go back a ways. You're older than me. No,
first show,
probably not.
First show I ever listened to of Art Bell was about the guy that can turn dirt into gold.
Alchemy.
Alchemy,
Too funny. Yeah.
Yeah, well, George is still touting gold all the time.
He's got great stories on there. Yep.
Yeah, he does. He has great stories, and he's got great, really weird people. Not like us. We're normal. Compared to his people, we're normal. My brother told me he thinks I'm the most normal person that's ever been on Coast to Coast. I said, that's really saying something, David.
All right, stand by. Here we go.
So next time you download a show, take a second to leave your thoughts and rate it.
This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and Upsnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Long ago, before this day's confusion did begin, throughout the stars did we go wandering. Distance was no barrier, and time it had no hope. Free to come and free to go. Free to come and free to go. Open up those.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Karmic Evolutions, Astrologically Speaking. I'm your host, Sherry Horn Hassan of Karmic Evolution Astrology, coming to you on June 23rd, 2022, from Contact Talk Radio. Just a quick reminder that this show aims to bring you the truth about astrology and your soul's karmic evolution. And my guest today, I'm very pleased to announce, is professional astrologer, author, and lecturer Mitchell Lewis, who I will, of course, be introducing properly in just a few moments. First, my usual housekeeping stuff, which is to tell you that you can listen to this Karmic Evolutions Astrologically Speaking podcast anytime by simply going to my website at karmicevolution.com and clicking on the upper right-hand portion of the banner labeled podcast. From there, you can hear the weeks. You can either join us live or you can hear the recording, which is up top, and or you can scroll down a little and search the archive listings for past shows that you might have missed or to which you'd like to listen again. Separately, I encourage you to follow me on my Facebook page, which is Karmic Evolution for Your Soul. I'd also like to remind everyone that I will be doing a workshop on Saturday, June 25th, which is 2 days away, for the Astrological Society of Princeton, called I Can't Get No Karmic Relief, or Can I? So this is for those who want to know how to delineate a chart from the evolutionary astrological perspective, meaning how to discern the true purpose of a soul's journey through this lifetime based on both early and past life experiences. The 4-hour workshop will teach you just that, along with how to define the soul lessons any particular individual has incarnated or reincarnated into this lifetime to learn, depending on one's individual beliefs. Part 1 of the workshop will illustrate how to read a chart from the evolutionary point of view, meaning through the lens of the nodal structure by house, sign, nodal ruling planets, and aspects to and from these ruling planets, and aspects to and from the nodes by other planets, major asteroids, and or sensitive chart points. Part 2 will be devoted to looking at participants' charts to help them better understand their individual hero's journey through this lifetime. So that means we'll look at what tripped you up, what may have, this is Stephen Forrest's word, vexed you, or otherwise prevented you either earlier in this lifetime and or during past lives from achieving your soul's real goals. In short, what energies created the karma into which you were born in this lifetime, and how can you better understand how such past soul conditioning became embedded in the psyche, allowing often or all too often the unconscious to run the show now. So what if we expanded our knowledge to better understand that much of what we call karma was created through circumstances often beyond our control? This workshop will focus on how we can decide to make different choices as we move forward into our future. Choices based not on habitual karmic soul patterning, but rather on creating new and future karma through conscious choice based on astrological insight. So please feel free to join me for this enlightening introduction to evolutionary astrology and to take a journey toward greater soul consciousness, which is basically designed to ensure a happier, more successful future in alignment with your soul's true purpose. So if you're interested in signing up for this or looking at more information, please go to aspnj.org. That's ASP for Astrological Society of Princeton, NJ for New Jersey, and .org. And if you'd like your chart to be included in the webinar or the workshop, feel free to send me your chart data after you sign up to Sherry, SHERI, at karmicevolution.com. And I'll be sure to include you. Now, as mentioned last week, and we're going to talk about this a little later too, last week, for those of you who were listening, I used the word co-opetition, right? Because, you know, I don't feel I'm in competition with any other astrologer. So as luck would have it, Mitchell Lewis, my guest today, is also giving a webinar on June 25th, this Saturday at 1 p.m. And his webinar is entitled Financial Astrology, and he's going to talk more about this, but this webinar will seek to answer the questions: will inflation continue? Is there a recession coming? Will there be a stock market crash or a recovery? And the talk will also include information on crypto, oil prices, real estate, interest rates, the pandemic, the war in the Ukraine, the U.S. midterm elections, and the markets. So as I said, Mitch will be telling us more about this and how to sign up for his during this interview. What I want to say, we're talking on two such vastly different topics, and I assume this is true for Mitch as for me. Everything will be recorded. So if your interest swings both ways, by all means, feel free to sign up for both webinars, and one you'll listen to live and the other one you'll listen to by recording. Okay. Now, finally, I'm also offering still my 1-hour discounted Karmic Evolution Natal Insight reading, and that's for listeners only for $99. So I'm going to be brief because I don't want to take time away from my interview with Mitch, but I'm just going to say, because I say this every week, for more information and to book your session, please go to my website and you will find the page for this particular special offer at karmicevolution.com/karmic99. And I'll be sure to get your reading scheduled as soon as possible. At almost half the regular price, conscious awareness has never been so easy or so affordable. Okay, so now let's get into this week's Astro news you can use. All right, so I'd like to start out with today's news. Mitch, I'm just going to ask you if you wouldn't mind muting your mic because I think we're hearing some background noise. I know in line with me about to talk about Mars in Aries, you had some police sirens before. It's perfect introduction. Anyway, I want to start out with today's news. Earlier today, the Supreme Court announced its decision to overturn a New York state law that limited the carrying of concealed guns in public. And this ruling will have major implications for all similar state laws that restrict guns outside the home, and is based predominantly on the conservative Supreme Court justices' broad interpretation of the Second Amendment, and this particular ruling, which again just came down a couple hours ago, according to the New York Times, will, quote, make it harder for states and localities to restrict guns. This is talking about concealed carry, right? So if you're on the subway, if you're on a bus, if you're on a train, you will have the right underneath this ruling to carry a concealed weapon. So let's take a little look back first. And let's remember that Jupiter conjoined Neptune in Pisces on April 12th, right? So we're basically talking a little over 2 months ago, which I think looking back now, we might all agree has something to do with the dissolution, that's Neptune and Pisces, of laws, that's Jupiter, part of Jupiter's definition, and the revealing of subterfuge around this topic, especially if we apply it to the January 6th committee hearings, which continue to highlight how former President Trump's attempt to eviscerate higher legal morality, again, Jupiter, at the level of the U.S. Department of Justice. Now, likewise, since this conjunction, especially, we're seeing the fruits of Trump's past efforts, which were spearheaded by the GOP Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, to pack the courts with conservative justices, particularly the 3 Trump appointees during his term. So as these chickens begin to come home to roost, and we all know we're awaiting the decision that allegedly, reportedly, is going to overturn the almost 50-year precedent of Roe versus Wade, which gives women the right to choose what to do with their bodies, especially in the realm of deciding whether or not to have an abortion. But we also saw already, and this was just 2 days ago on June 21st, the Supreme Court's decision that demands that the state of Maine designate a share of its public school funding to help fund religious private schools. Or as NPR put it, and I quote here, the Supreme Court rules Maine's tuition assistance program must cover religious schools. That means state funds, but some of which I assume, if not all of them, come out of taxpayers' pockets, will now have to fund private and religious schools. Now, this stands in direct contrast to the previously accepted doctrine of the separation between church and state in America. So I thought it was interesting that about 12 hours after the moon moved into Aries at 11:37 p.m. on June 20th, it then conjoined with Jupiter at 6 degrees 33 minutes of Aries at 11:37 a.m. That's 12 hours later on June 21st. And that is the day that the sun moved into Cancer at the summer solstice too. Now remember, one of Jupiter's definitions is religion, and Cancer is, of course, family. So again, this case in Maine reduces the separation between church and state in this country and increases the rights of those with religious beliefs, potentially encroaching on and or reducing the rights of others. Now, since Mars entered its own sign of Aries on May 24th, the same day that the deranged shooter murdered 19 third and fourth graders and 2 teachers in Uvalde, Texas, the warrior planet met up with Jupiter at 3 degrees and 19 minutes of Aries on May 29th, which was the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. And this kicked off a new 2-year cycle. And that expanded, on one hand, the potential for violence, while on the other, increased the ability of the legal system to hold violators of the law responsible for their unlawful deeds. Now, bear in mind that the way that I look at astrology, the universe is benign. It has no vested interest. The universe isn't partisan. I mean, the only thing we could say the universe is partisan about is soul growth for each individual. So, these aspects and these cycles are going to play differently for each of us and play differently also within the collective. So this is something I saw that, according to ABC News, in a piece dated June 13th, which was obviously after Memorial Day weekend, quote, "The string of consecutive weekend mass casualty incidents began over the Memorial Day holiday when at least 17 shootings left a total of 13 dead and 79 injured in cities across the country, including Philadelphia, Chicago, Houston, Phoenix, Memphis, and Chattanooga, Tennessee. Last weekend, at least 11 mass casualty shootings erupted, leaving a total of 17 dead and 62 injured across the nation." Now he's referring to this, this piece refers to that time period between Memorial Day weekend and June 13th. So as of today, June 23rd, 2022, to date, the U.S. has recorded 279 mass shootings throughout the U.S., according to the Gun Violence Archive. And that includes the deaths of 168 children, with 351 children injured, and the deaths of 622 teenagers, with 1,651 injured. So guns will doubtless continue to be an issue with the American public, including through the upcoming midterm elections, and particularly when Mars stations retrograde in Gemini. And Gemini, again, is related, at least as part of its definition, to young people and to early childhood learning and education. Typically, the 3rd house, which is ruled by Mercury's Gemini, encompasses from now, I would say, preschool, though we used to say kindergarten, through high school. And Mars will station retrograde on October 30th and remain retrograde until January 12th of 2020. So in general, this retrograde period will call us all to find and empower our inner warrior. And that means the part of us that needs to be empowered enough not to have to resort to violence, to make its personal will known, understood, and respected. And meanwhile, again, on this gun issue, sorry to beat a dead horse, but today, again, just before I came on the air, the U.S. Senate, which has been working on a bipartisan agreement on legislation to curb certain gun rights that exist, voted 65 to 24 to clear the way procedurally for a vote on this legislation that will enact, on a federal level, strengthening background checks, red flag laws, raising the age of buying guns from 18 to 21, and more. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the end, as several of the nation's mayors of major cities, such as New York and Chicago, have already expressed their displeasure with today's Supreme Court ruling. I believe many more are likely to do so, especially from the most crime-ridden cities in the nation. and those that I just mentioned or quoted from the article about, where there is a huge amount of gun violence, whether it's due to gangs or other reasons. Now, next week heralds Neptune's station retrograde at 25 degrees 26 minutes of Pisces, just before the Cancer new moon occurs at 7 degrees and 22 minutes of the sign of the sensitive, nurturing, compassionate, intuitive mother, but also of the past and our habitual behaviors. And this Cancer new moon is going to square Jupiter in Aries on June 28th. So, in the interest of time, and in order to leave enough time for my guest interview, I want to point out several quick things and note that I'll be posting my Cancer New Moon report on Facebook before this lunation occurs, and that you can also go to my website at karmicevolution.com, where, by the way, you can now download my free How to Keep Your Sun Sign Happy advice based on my interview with astrologer Stephen Forrest, and that will automatically sign you up for my email list. So the Neptune retrograde period, which lasts until December 4th. It starts on the 28th, lasts 28th of June, and lasts until December 4th, asks us to go inward to truly determine what is fact and what fiction, what is false because it's based only on wishful or fantastical thinking, and what is true. Now, we each have our own truths. That's a given. But there are also indisputable, actual, factual proofs that no one can deny. I'm sorry to break it to you folks, but the world or the earth is not flat. So it's during this period the universe will ask us to go deep about our connection to the energy of the collective, as well as to the spiritual realm, to determine how we truly feel and whether or not we want to participate in life or attempt to swim back to the metaphorical womb to escape the difficulty of life's most painful moments, and in doing so, thereby renege on our reason for having chosen to be born in the first place, which is to live our lives to their fullest, connected to both spirit and empathically with others through the common bond of our humanity. I'd like to point out also, and we'll talk more about this in, again, my blog post and my newsletter and on next week's show, that that Cancer, the archetypal ruler of the moon, is very much about our intuitive instincts. So this Cancer new moon will ask us to plant seeds around getting in better touch with our body and its needs. So self-nurturing is the name of the game here as this lunar cycle waxes. And since the moon in general runs in cycles, as we all know, from new to full and back to new again, it represents the cycles of fertility, growth, release, and ultimately death. It fertilizes both the soil and therefore the earth, which has much to do with our survival on this planet. And so which is right now connected to issues that threaten our survival, such as climate change. As the sign of the mother, Cancer rules the body because it's from her body that we all spring. Okay, this is different from saying, Venus is Taurus and the earth signs, but we're talking about, the connection here between mother and child, so, and between earth and her children, which is us humans, so, and animals, of course, or any other living sentient being. So it's from mother's body that we are fed, just as it's from the body of the earth that we survive and thrive through its fertility. So since this Cancer new moon squares Jupiter, it's going to raise issues around our arrogance, or as the Greeks called it, hubris. On this score, we've already seen the shortage of breast milk, basically because there are only a small handful of corporations that produce it, and the major one has had contamination in its factory, creating this terrible backlog and lack of production. Likewise, we're seeing what I've been referring to, which is that, so here what I'm trying to say is, okay, so how much is our need to expand our profits cutting into our ability to survive, or our ability of our children to survive? Maybe we should have more than 2 or 3 or 4 of these companies, Competition is good. Like I said, co-opetition, right? Anyway, likewise, we're seeing what I've been referring to in this whole program, which is the murder of our children in our schools and this recent Supreme Court decision. I mean, we might go deep during this period as Neptune retrogrades and the Cancer new moon hits about whether your child is actually my child, and that we're all connected, and that we all feel the same grief when any child's life is lost. And because Mars in Aries is now waxing, it will be at this new moon, waxing toward a cardinal square to Pluto in Capricorn, which will perfect next week on July 1st, on the threshold of July 4th weekend, we may see some more explosive things happen beyond simply July 4th weekend fireworks. So let's keep our eyeballs peeled, as my dad used to say, and we'll talk more about that next week. All right, so now I want to introduce today's guest. Mitchell Lewis, a professional astrologer in New York City for more than 3 decades, specializes in financial astrology and medical chart interpretation, as well as relationships, elective astrology, and life direction. Mitchell works with natal charts, transits, solar arc directions, secondary progressions, and composite charts. Throughout the 1990s, he worked on the floor of the New York Mercantile Exchange and became well known as an astrological trader and market analyst. He's been quoted in Barron's, the New York Daily News, and many other publications. Since 2011, Mitchell has been a regular guest on the radio show Coast to Coast with George Noory, where he discusses the economy, politics, and the future of our society. In Living by Starlight, his ongoing monthly newsletter, as well as in lectures and numerous appearances on national television and radio, Mitchell has accurately predicted a number of world events, including the rise and fall of oil prices, the collapse of the housing market, and the 2008 stock market crash, which he precisely foretold within days of its occurrence more than a year in advance. He also accurately predicted the current stock market volatility in his lectures and writings during this entire past year, as well as the collapse of cryptocurrencies. Mitch is currently recording a series of Zoom webinars that will be available live and on his website. The next one, as I mentioned before, is this Saturday, June 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern and 10 a.m. Pacific time. And in it, he'll discuss, as we said, the current financial markets, the bear stock market, inflation, and the possible looming recession. He'll also look at the history of the stock market, cryptocurrency, oil, the metals, and how astrological recurring events influence our economy. To register for this webinar or to sign up for Mitch's newsletter, simply go to his website at mitchastro.com to keep abreast of his exact webinar dates. Also, the author of the Starlight Detective Agency Mystery Series, which highlights protagonist astrologer detective David Lowell and features New York City as a backdrop, Mitch's books have developed a cult following among savvy mystery buffs. The third novel in the series, Evil in the First House, was published recently by Poison Pen Press, and the fourth book in the series, Satan in the Second House, will be available soon. Okay, Mitch, you're up, baby. How are you?
Hi, Sherry. How you doing?
I'm good. So let's get right down to it. Like what's up with the financial markets? All these all these questions. I know you're going to go into this in really great detail. I'm telling everybody I'm signing up for Mitch's webinar because he's best. All right. So No, I mean, I learned volumes from him. I'll never forget, and I think I said this to you recently, Mitch, you did a lecture in 2019 for the Baltimore NCGR, I think it was, where you showed us the chart of the New York Stock Exchange, and I don't remember, you'll have to, refresh my memory, but whatever it was happening on the descendant, and you predicted a global, recession or things that would globally affect our finances. It's spot on. Anyway, so are we waiting for a bigger crash? Is this current volatility going to settle down? Like, what's going on? And what's the astrology say?
First of all, every time the stock market goes down, every time it drizzles in New York City. Everybody screams, flood. We are in a bear market 24% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize that. We have had, I think, 13 recessions since the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
Inflation comes and goes periodically. None of this is cause for hysterics, and yet that's exactly what happens every single time.
Right.
When the stock market goes down, the rich stand on the sideline and they wait, and then they buy up bargains, while the middle class loses their mind and sells at the worst possible time. Oh, they call up their brokers, or they go to their TD Ameritrade account, and they sell when the market's crashing. They lose a fortune. You can't convince them to get back in again. And it's not the way to look at the markets.
Oh, Lord. I can't tell you how I may have said this before on the show. I really don't know, but I call myself TC, which is technologically challenged. So it seems like we've lost Mitch. I wish I could fill in for him and tell you all the stuff that he's going to tell you, but I can't. Still discarding all of the misinformation and disinformation, which is not going to be able to be verified or factually proven, so that we can concentrate on what is actually true. And as many of you know, that is what we, when I talk about these January 6th hearings, which, by the way, are having an effect, according to the news, on even some of the Republicans who are now beginning to move away from Donald Trump as perhaps the next GOP nominee for 2024 presidential elections. So, what I was saying before is that the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction, Jupiter expands, Neptune is the collective. So all of this, well, people say, and I don't know, someone told me, and, that kind of vagueness, that's the kind of stuff we need to discard as the Sag moon's lunar cycle is still waning. Because if you watched any of the hearings or the clips on the news of this guy who was the Arizona State Speaker of the House, he kept asking for the names of the people who were supposedly dead but voted, or, absentee ballot problems, and none was ever produced. So, but here's the dichotomy too, which I think is really weird and extremely Neptunian and works on the other side, right?
Hello.
Oh, Mitch, you're back. Yay. Yep. Let me just finish my thought. I just want to say to everybody, because I've been filling in time, that it works both ways, right? So there's this guy who is now saying that he couldn't find any evidence, and therefore what was said is not true. But on the other hand, gave an interview after that hearing with the Associated Press to say that he would definitely vote for Trump again if he was the nominee. So you can see the dichotomy right there, right? Okay, so back to you, Mitch. So, ¿Qué pasa? Where you been? You took a vacation?
You guys disconnected me. It had nothing to do with my phone.
I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming you. I love you. So you were talking about the fact that there were 24, what was it? 24 bear markets, or
24% of the time we are in a bear market.
We're in a bear market. Right. Okay.
And there are recessions every couple of years, and inflation has raised its head a lot of times since 1929, and it's an ongoing expansion and contraction of the markets.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that most people don't understand money. They don't understand how these things work, and they respond from fear and panic. And what happens, and is happening now, is that the panic is setting in, and everybody's absolutely hysterical. The inflation is at 8%. Yeah, that's high. Mm-hmm. At the end of the Second World War, inflation was at 18%.
Mm-hmm.
in the 1973 oil embargo,
Mhm.
it was at 9, 10%, 1989, 90, I mean 78, 79, 80, and
Right.
81, it was between 10 and 18%.
Wow.
And what happens is that inflation occurs usually for the very same reasons. For one thing, what happened at the end of the First World War and the Second World War, because there was globalization before the First World War. That's the first time that that term has been used, possibly since the Roman Empire. And the war breaks apart chains, supply chains.
Right.
And there were limits put on everything. Everything was rationed. During the Second World War, in 1941, more than 3 million cars were made in America. During the entire Second World War, they produced 169 cars.
Wow. Mhm.
Because Roosevelt went to the car companies and said, you're no longer making cars, you're making tanks, you're making guns, you're making helmets, you're doing this stuff.
Right.
And so the Second World War ends and millions of men and women come out of the service all over the world. And now they want all the stuff that they've been denied. They want houses, they want cars. This is what led to the great era of American cars in the 50s and 60s, when every car company looked different. Now every car looks the same. You got to look at the name to see what you're driving.
I know,
But
ain't
there
that
was,
the truth?
GTOs, and there were, Fords, and there were Dodges, and everything looked different.
Mhm.
And everybody wanted the stuff that had been rationed. Last time I was on George's show on Coast to Coast, I told him a story. I said, George, you're old enough, you'll get this joke. I said, in an Abbott and Costello movie back in the early 40s, it takes place in a nightclub. And some guy gets knocked out, and a huge wad of money falls out of his pocket. And Lou picks it up, and it's, a whole thing of dollar bills or, hundreds, whatever, rolled up with a rubber band around it. And Lou takes it and he goes, wow. And he takes the rubber band off and throws the money away. And he looks at the camera and he stretches the rubber band. He says, rubber, real rubber.
That's hysterical.
It is hysterical.
Yeah.
And of course, you show it to somebody 25 years old, they have no idea what you're talking
Right,
about. But that's not the point. The point is that that's where we're at now. The pandemic did the same thing. Also, inflation spikes when oil spikes. After the Yom Kippur War in 1973, the OPEC had an oil embargo and inflation ran up to 8-9%. In 1989, there was the Iran Revolution and inflation runs up to almost 20%. In 1973, the price of oil quadrupled. In 1979, it doubled. And all of that is the same. And it just shows, of course, that how much we are still,
oil dependent.
to the oil companies.
Right.
And as you mentioned in your introduction, the Supreme Court today basically murdered America. Everybody expected it. It's not a surprise, but this is exactly what we've all been afraid of. This is the legacy of Donald J. Trump. The joke, Trump is talking to Putin, and Putin says, Donald J. Trump, what does the J stand for? And Trump says, genius.
I love it.
So this is exactly what I and many of us have been writing about since long before he went into the White House. And this is just the start. They are going to crucify, I hate to use that term because of the religious connotation, but that's exactly what they're doing. They're bringing us back 100 years. Forget about women's rights. I have a number of Jewish clients, older people, women in particular, who have called me and said, are they going to confiscate our property?
Oh, wow.
Like they did in Germany?
Right. And Russia.
And that's the country that we are living in now. When I got my first reading, one of my first readings from Isabel Hickey, many, many years ago. She told me because I had a Jupiter bucket in the 4th house, I would most likely live out the end of my life in a foreign country. And I said, well, Izzy, your reading's fantastic, but that's never going to happen. I love America.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm looking for a country to move to.
Mm-hmm.
She was a good astrologer, Izzy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
the point is that what's happening economically is tied into what's happening everywhere else. Last night when I was on the show, George and I started to talk, and I said to him, about real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I said to him, you understand that the Great Salt Lake has lost 2/3 of its water, and it is now spewing a poisonous gas that will affect 2.5 million people who live in that area.
Wow.
Lake Mead, which is where Las Vegas gets all of its water, has dried up so much that the bodies that the mafia buried in that lake in the 50s and 60s are coming back to the surface.
That's so funny. I'm sorry. I'm from
Well,
Staten Island, which is like next to Brooklyn, the home of the mafia. So I'm laughing. Yeah.
No,
Yeah. I got you.
But
Yeah.
this is exactly what we're facing.
Yeah.
And there is going to be a migration of 30-40 million people who are going to look. Do you know that if Las Vegas goes out of business, what that will cost this country?
Yeah, I'm sure
Trillions of dollars.
Wow.
You want to talk about a depression setting in? When the Southwest continues, because this Supreme Court, it's not just them, but it's the complacency. Look, Sherry, the truth of the matter is, I don't blame the Republicans. This is what they believe in. I blame the Democrats.
Yeah.
They have no balls.
Yeah.
They refuse to stand up. Oh, we're going to do it the right way, and we're going to be okay. I once wrote something in my newsletter that 2 of my friends said to me, you can't say that. You have to take that out. I wrote, I have 2 words for my liberal friends. Arm yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I took it out of the newsletter because I thought that it was too incendiary. And here we are. And you forget about it. I mean, you want to live in New York? You want to go in the subway? You want to go to a supermarket? Bring a gun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to live like that. I have no desire to live in what this country is becoming. Absolutely none. And nobody is going to stand up and change it because nobody has the balls to do it. And the people who believe that you should have the right to a gun are they're thrilled. Look at what the Supreme Court is doing.
Of course.
Look, Sherry, there has never been in our history a Supreme Court that has gone against its own precedent. Not like this.
Yeah,
I know. Tearing down the very fabric of America. So when you talk about the economy, you can't separate it from what's happening.
Yeah, yeah.
When Saturn is in hard aspect to the outer planets, especially
I was going to
Uranus,
ask you about Uranus. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. The markets go down. Sometimes there's a crash. Sometimes there's a recession. Sometimes it's mild. Sometimes it's more pertinent. I expected, first of all, in 2020, having not knowing anything about the pandemic yet, Pluto and Saturn and and Jupiter all conjoining, I knew that there was going to be a crash, and we had what was a flash crash. The markets went down and they ran all the way back up again. And when you look at the economy today, you're not dealing with an organic economic situation. These markets are not being allowed to breathe. Markets have to breathe. They get too overblown, they have to shrink down again. Then you clean out all the crap, and then they build up again. You know what I'm now calling? I used to refer to it as Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Now I'm referring to it as cryptocurrency.
I love it.
It is a con game. And I spent a lot of time last night on his show also. He's not a big fan of cryptocurrency. It is a con game. There is no reason for it to exist. It's a pyramid scheme. I buy in, and then I convince a lot of other people to buy in, and then when it runs up, I take my money out and you can go do what with yourself.
Right.
So it's all interconnected. Inflation is going to go down. It will be usually inflation hovers around 2%, 3%. Goes above 3%, people start getting a little nervous. Gets to 8%, I understand. Gasoline is insane. Well, I wonder why. Because the gas companies are charging as much money, the oil companies are charging as much money as they can squeeze out of you.
Right.
And the war in Ukraine is not going away. By the way, one of the strongest currencies in the world right now is the ruble.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Don't tell me that.
So
I'm depressed.
But it's true. And
I believe you.
Hide your head in the sand. This is what's happened. Russia said, okay, you don't want our oil? They said we're going to sell it to India and to China and to Africa.
Yeah, I saw the Chinese are buying a good portion of it now.
They are making a fortune.
Yeah.
And Putin is laughing all the way to the bank. And the people, of course, that are getting the worst of it are the Ukrainians, because eventually what will happen is everybody's going to they're bored. They're going to want to turn on something else. Let's watch The Simpsons.
Right.
And
that's already happened. Yeah.
Right. So that's humanity. And again, I consider myself an optimist with all the Sag and Jupiter in my chart. I think that the economy is very strong. We don't have high unemployment. Would a recession lead to higher unemployment? Yes. If we have a recession, it will tick up. But right now we are at historic lows of unemployment. The dollar is very strong. In fact, the dollar may be too strong because it's affecting imports and exports. All of this stuff is interconnected. And you think that Joe Biden is responsible for this? You think that this you can't talk to people because they're
Well, they don't know. They don't understand, and they just believe what they hear. And they hear a lot of propaganda and misinformation and disinformation. That's what I was talking about before. You got to look up the facts, and then you got to decide we're at the point where people can be confronted with facts, but they think the facts are conspiracy theories. So we're in a
Sherry, this is true. This is true throughout humanity. Let me give you an example of astrology. I love astrology. I have many friends who are astrologers, blah, blah, blah. My brother pointed this out to me once. He said to me, somebody writes an astrology book, whatever. And in the book, they say, blah, blah, blah. This squared that means this. Well, everybody reads the book. And then they say, oh, that has to be the truth. And so they take that and they say, that's what it means, without doing any research. Because you don't want to do the work. I run into this in financial astrology all the time. When I come to the conclusion that a planet has influence over a commodity or over a market, it's because I have done hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of work on it. Some astrologers out there do the same. Phil Cerubi, my favorite Alfie Lavoie. These guys do their homework. Christine Skinner. And a lot of people don't do a damn thing. I heard an interview with somebody who called herself a commodities astrology trader. And at one point in the interview, she says, well, orange juice is ruled by the sun because it's orange in color like the sun.
Oh boy.
That's when I hung up and went to sleep.
Right. Click. Yeah, I hear you. So let me ask you though. No, I'm sorry. I'm just curious to know, given what you're saying, right? So things aren't as bad as they look, but do you think that, astrologically things like the Saturn square Uranus coming back into tighter square around the time of the elections is going to bring people out in the streets about these kinds of issues? And
Sherry,
from what I'm gathering, you're saying is that it's not going to matter, but I'm just still curious if you think it's going to happen,
Okay. First of all, there's an old saying, the economy controls politics, and that is very often true. What is also true is that sometimes politics controls the economy. The chart of election days, I'm sure you've looked at it, is insane. It is a full moon eclipse with Uranus conjunct the sun, all of it squared by Saturn, and Mars squaring Neptune right on America's Mars-Neptune square.
Yep.
It is going to be a horror. There's going to be violence. There are going to be one lawsuit after another. States are not going to sit their electors, and all the rest that we're afraid of is going to happen.
Right.
And that will probably be the bottom of this market. That through the summer, the market, we have bear market rallies that are massive. The Dow could go up 3,000 points in a bear market rally, but it's still a bear market.
Right.
And then it comes off hard and it collapses again, and everybody panics again and again. And what you do under this kind of, you got three choices in this kind of market. When you first see it happening, sell everything and sit on the sideline. Go to the beach. Or do nothing. Leave your stocks alone, because in time they will come back again. They always do. And frankly, if they don't, well, school's out. The world's over.
Right.
And the other thing that you can do is you have to trade defensively. This is a time when you look at things like bonds that are starting to look a little better, because they're going up to 3%, 3.5% yield. And so you'll make a little money on the bonds where you didn't for the longest time, because they were the interest rates were artificially lower. You go and you buy dividend-paying stock funds. The stocks aren't going to go up very much, but they pay you a dividend every single quarter. I have AT&T, and I have Warner Brothers, which AT&T had owned, and they sold it off, and so I got some of that stock, and they both pay a dividend. And there are funds that only have dividend-paying stocks in them. I had a lot of people over the last year or two say to me, I'm afraid the world's coming to an end. I want to pay off my mortgage. I said, what's your mortgage rate? Oh, it's 3%. I say, you'd be out of your mind to pay it off. The government is giving you money at 3% interest. You could buy stocks and make 7% and sit in your underwear and watch Walker, Texas Ranger and make 4% doing nothing. I understand that people don't get it. They don't understand it. It's not the business they're in. I understand that. That's why I do what I do. And people book me, and we look over their entire portfolio. I had one guy call me. He has 6 houses in the Southwest. And he says, what should I do? I said, sell them. This was about a year or a little bit more ago. I said, sell them. Take the cash and stick it in the bank and do nothing. Right. Because they're going to run out of water, and the interest rates are going to go up, and people won't be able to get mortgages. And I don't know if he did it or he didn't, because he never called me back. But if he paid attention to what I said, but not just him. This is the advice that I've given lots of people, even people who want to move out of their home. They're afraid to move now because it'll cost them so much more. But if the house is paid off and you can get a cash deal, sell the damn house and rent for a year. And see what happens. You may walk away with $200,000-$300,000 that you never would have been able to take out of your house.
Yeah, my ex-husband did it last June. He's smart and savvy and made a bundle, and I don't begrudge him it, because I got my share out in 2003 when I divorced him.
Well, there you go.
But it wasn't worth waiting in the marriage for that kind of appreciation till 2021. Okay.
No. Enough is enough.
Yeah. But listen,
Look,
we have about 5 minutes left, so I just want to give you a heads up, and I want to make sure you get a chance to reiterate the details of your upcoming seminar. So is there anything, in particular that you want everybody to know? Because some of this is sounding a little gloom and doomy.
The webinar is this Saturday, same time as yours.
Right.
And you go to my website, mitchastro.com. Right on the home page, there's a thing. You click on it. You go to PayPal, you pay a few bucks, and they send you a link.
Okay.
I want to say one more thing before we run out of time.
Yes.
James Thurber was a very famous cartoonist and not James.
James Thurber, humorist.
Thurber?
Yeah.
Or Jules Pfeiffer. No, I think it's James Thurber. James Thurber. Yeah.
Yep.
And he wrote one of the shortest short stories ever written. It's called Interview with a Lemming. And the interviewer goes and he's talking to the lemming, and he says to the lemming, we people don't understand why you lemmings throw yourselves in the ocean and drown. And let me say, we understand why you people don't.
Wow. It's a pessimistic though. Give us something on a happy note. I mean, is there a happy note? Because, all of this makes me think, and I know we don't have time to get into the major discussion, but I remember you talking a long time ago about Pluto return, right? The U.S. Pluto return, bringing all of the crap to the surface, all of the pus, the boil
that's
to
what's
a head.
happening, Sherry.
Right,
That's
right.
what's happening. The Supreme Court is no longer, people are no longer hiding under their beds with their guns. They're marching with them.
Yes, yes.
Look, okay, here's my optimistic perspective on it all. If you don't clean out an infection, it will eventually kill you.
Right.
Getting to that infection and cleaning it out hurts. But if you're willing to do it, you clean it out, you recover, and you live better. It's like getting, you have blockages in your heart. They open you up, they clean it all out, and now you're healthier than you've been since you're 35. Yeah.
Right.
And that's what America is going through. We are going through a terrible healing process. It is painful, and it is costing us in children's lives and in everything else. But if we do not make changes in the fundamental way that our government works, we're not going to survive as one country. I'm not sure we are one country at this point.
Right.
And so
right.
I am realizing now that either you take the cure or you kiss your ass goodbye. And I don't think that we are going to do that. I think we're going to have to figure it out. And that means not hiring 85-year-old people to run our government.
Yeah, I think that Saturn square Uranus is going to probably see us on to the other side of that when it's over. That's what I think. But listen,
I don't think that Trump or Biden is going to be president.
I don't think so either, because I don't think the young people will have it, especially the ones who are going to be eligible to vote by 2024. Who knows
who's going to be eligible to vote by that time? They are stealing the election right in front of our eyes. They're doing it right out in the open.
Yeah.
And the January 6th, committee is great, and it's great television. I love watching it. I don't think it's going to be the damn thing in the end.
Well, we'll see. The Congress is too slow, but that's another Saturn thing. But anyway, we are out of time. Mitch, you're welcome back anytime. I'm going to say again, please sign up for Mitch's webinar, because if this is the topic that interests you most, this is the guy. He's going to go into much more detail than he did here in this short interview. Okay.
That's going to be a PowerPoint with about 100 slides. So
yeah, no, your stuff is great. Like I said, I'm signing up for it too. So, no, I am. So, if your interest swings my way, then buy Mitch's and listen to it after the fact, or vice versa, whatever. So, Mitchell, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherry. You take care of yourself and have a great webinar on Saturday yourself, and
thank you.
Whatever, mine will be available after the fact, I'm sure.
Yeah, both of them will. Yeah, both of them will. So it's not an either or. It's a, what is they say, and something. I don't know. But anyway, so thank you, Mitch. Thanks to everyone else for joining us today. I hope you found the information presented here helpful as you continue your karmic evolution in this lifetime. Please be sure to join me next week, June 30th, for another episode of Karmic Evolutions, Astrologically Speaking. Until then, may your journey be filled with karmic healing and the joy of greater consciousness. Namaste.
Long ago, before this day's confusion did begin, throughout the stars did we go wandering. Distance was no barrier, and time it had no hope. Free to come